Jews do that. Jews will, when they're complaining about something, they'll say, oi. Well, oy vey actually comes from the Bible. And we'll see that here today. And of course, Jews are known for complaining. I was already told this to Abishai, but they're known for having real bad attitudes. They'll say that themselves. And I said, when I was a kid, my dad would do a lot of car dealing and horse trading. He was a horse trader, always buying junky cars. And so he's always making deals. And I'd hear the phrase, Jewing the guy down. And I never thought about putting it with a race. I said that to Abishai. Oh, he said, man, is that racial? Yeah, it is. But it's talking about being cheap and kind of cheating, almost cheating somebody, Jewing the guy down. And when I was over there in Israel, I said one of our tour guides, one of the Jewish guys, said, we're like Sabra. And Sabra over there are cactus. Of course, if you think of cactus over here, he said, we call ourselves Sabra. We're prickly on the outside, but soft on the inside. And I thought, no, you're prickly on the outside and you're prickly on the inside. Because they'll just tell it to you, just blunt, just as blunt as they can be. And I've heard that phrase, oy vey, or oi. And he's talking about here, this is the section I've wanted to get to from Ecclesiastes 10, verse 15. And I wish, and I don't know that we could, it might be a pipe dream, but wish we could get through all of these verses, but we're going to go quick. I do know this, we are going to go quick. And again, the young people are here today because my son's over preaching for Brother Ewer there in Tuba City. But just talking about foolish things in our life and this world. And this one here could be discouraging. But it's just foolishness we see in the land. And I get that from verse number 16. Here's where you get that word, oi. You get it from the word woe. And I'll explain that here. Verse 16, woe to thee, O land, when thy king is a child and thy princes eat in the morning. Now, you read that here, and you first read that, whenever I read that here, I think, what in the world? And it takes me a while to think it through, but it makes perfect sense. And I'll explain that here in a minute. But I want you to look back. This part really starts at verse number 15. He's talking about a land with this in trouble. He said, when you see this going on in a land, that land is in trouble. And he says in verse number 15, the labor of the foolish wearieth every one of them, because he knoweth not how to go to the city. Woe to thee, O land, when thy king is a child, and thy princes eat in the morning. Blessed art thou, O land, when thy king is the son of nobles, and thy princes eat in due season for strength, and not for drunkenness. By much slothfulness the building decayeth, and through idleness of the hands the house droppeth through. A feast is made for laughter, and wine maketh merry, but money answereth all things. Curse not the king, no, not in thy thought, and curse not the rich in thy bedchamber, for a bird in the air shall carry the voice, and that which hath wings shall tell the matter. And he's talking about a situation where I would just title it, foolish decisions in our land. When you're living in a land that the leaders are foolish. And I want you to see how accurate your Bible is, even these passages. Now, if you're like me, when I first read that, and I think, well, what's that mean? Thy princes eat in the morning. What's that? What's negative about that? Princes eating in the morning, and blessed art thou. And the next one, the king's the son of nobles. Well, that kind of would stand to reason. Thy princes eat in due season. What that mean? No, that don't mean a whole lot. Yeah, it does mean a lot. And it's perfect explanation of what's going on in our country. I like words, and so right off the bat, if you look at verse 15, the word labor kind of already starts right out. You can kind of, if you study out words, again, that's what the world is. If you don't know what your words, the definition of words, then you don't know what a woman is. I'm just serious. We don't even know the definition of words today, and that's a communistic technique. I said, I remember years ago, and I've told this before, that Brother Dunn, we were over there in their mission field, and I remember him explaining what that government over there, and I'm trying to avoid from saying it, with the government where he ministers, how they eliminated words. They were eliminating words. And if you eliminate that word, you eliminate that concept in a person's mind. Words like liberty or freedom If you eliminate those words, then you say, well, do you have freedom in your land? And they say, well, what do you mean freedom? And you say, well, that you're able to do what you want. Yeah, we have freedom. I get up when I want, and I eat how much rice I want. But it's their concept of freedom is totally different than your concept. And he explained it, and I never forgot it. But it was a little deeper than I'd ever thought, so I didn't write it down. But now I'm seeing they're doing that in our country, and they're eliminating concepts, just like eliminating. And you saw this here a few years ago. And you know the thing; these things are important in the land. But when they eliminated cursive writing, I thought that was weird. Why? Well, so we don't need cursive because we've got laptops. And then somebody started realizing if they eliminate cursive writing, then our children will not know anything. They'll not be able to read the Declaration of Independence. They will not be able to even read. See, you and I said, well, it's not that big a deal. In 30 years, 40, 50 years, if the Lord doesn't come, they would look at our Constitution and it'd be like you looking at French. They could not even read and say, hey, you guys, you're breaking the Constitution right here. And anybody would say, well, I don't see that. They can't even read it. Now, I think I've been hearing they're bringing cursive back. And they're realizing we do need that. Well, I sure don't print. To me, I write. I still write a lot. And to me, I'd rather write cursive. It's a lot faster. To me, there was an ulterior motive in that. And he's saying here there's ulterior motives going on when you see this in a land. That word labor means to toil, a weary effort, mischief. He said, when you see somebody he said, they might be working hard, but they can still be a fool in it. Look at that. He says, the labor of a fool wearieth. He said, a fool can work hard, but that doesn't mean they're not a fool. But what happens is they exhaust their reasoning. Their arguing is exhausting. And I think that's perfect today. It wearies every one of them. When you listen to the reasoning of a lot of people on the street, it's exhausting. You have to run through all kinds of mental hoops to try to follow some stupid reasoning. And you hear it all the time. I saw one where a guy was interviewing a younger woman. She wasn't a girl. She wasn't an older woman. And he has a microphone, and he says, they're walking the street, some protest, and he says, what advice would you give to women, or to men? What advice would women give to men? And she says, here's her advice. She said, listen to women. You need to listen to women and not be ignorant, and get our advice and get our information and not be ignorant. And he said, what is a woman? And she went, what he should have said was, hey, wait, I'm ignorant. Help me. Give me advice. What he did was he nailed her in her total, absolute, oblivious stupidity. You need to listen to our intelligence. What's a woman? They won't answer it. They won't answer it because their whole house of cards would begin to fall about everything she's protesting, everything she thinks important, the reason she gets up in the morning, what she's screaming about, what she's yelling about, and half the time they don't even know. I love it when they interview them and say, well, now, what are you actually protesting? And they'll say, what are we protesting? It's exhausting. It's exhausting. When you have people, the circular reasoning today, when it comes to our liberal philosophies, and even Obama's goal was, his plan was, we're going to spend our way out of debt. That's what he said. If you tried to spend your way out of debt, they'd throw you in jail for that. If you took your credit card and say, honey, the way we're going to get this credit card paid is we're going to max it out. We're going to max out every credit card we got. That's how we're going to pay off the credit cards. It's exhausting. And that's why he says, it wearieth every one of them. Look what he says, because he knoweth not how to go into the city. Now again, if we were saying it today, that's why I love the Bible. The Jews, it's a Jewish book. We would say, he doesn't know how to come in out of the rain. You kids know what that means, right? He doesn't got enough sense to come in out of the rain. We would use that today. And this guy, they said they don't even know which way they're going. They don't know up from down. You ever heard that? They don't know up from down? When I was 12 years old, my dad started letting me work at some sale barns, work out a little bit. He always wanted us to work at home. He had 6 boys, and he didn't want you working out. But my older brother got a job at a sale barn. We got a job in this town of Loup City, Nebraska. And Loup City is the Polish capital of Nebraska. Reading their phone books is a hoot. Everybody's ski, ski, Kaminsky, Kowalski, the whole thing. And I remember working there in that sale barn at Loup City, and our buddy said, man, these Polacks, he was so mad. He said, they don't know up from down. I'd never heard that before. They don't know up from down. That's what we would say. And they just said that, man, some people, when you start seeing leaders in a land, that they may be working hard at what they're doing, like Elizabeth Warren. Oh, they're so concerned. They're so concerned. We'll see how concerned they really are in these verses right here in a minute. And they'll say, but it's just, the reason is exhausting. They're not even thinking things through. It says then he says in verse number 16, look at it. Woe to thee, O land. Woe to thee, you're in trouble. When thy king is a child. Now, when you look at this here, I've thought of this verse a lot. I thought of this when Obama got elected. When thy king is a child and thy princes eat in the morning. Now, I'll explain some things. I studied this out. The word woe, the way you pronounce it is E. And that's where they get oi. They're emphasizing, I'm emphasizing the O. They always, like I said, when it's the Hebrew, I don't care how you pronounce it, you're wrong. Is Mordecai? No. Mordecai? No. Mordecai? No. It's whatever you think is wrong. And what I have noticed in the Hebrew is we seem to emphasize, it seems like everything word we emphasize, they emphasize the other. We say Bethel, go back to Bethel, and they say Bethel, and they'll emphasize the last part. I told you trying to find Samson's tomb, and there was a young couple there in the park, and I knew it was just around somewhere. I knew it was right in the park. I said, Samson, your Bible, strong, Samson. And they couldn't get it. My wife was with me, and finally he goes, oh, Samson. I said, no, Samson. I go, Samson. They go, Samson. Well, here, that word E, that's where they get oi, or oive. And in Germany, that's where you get the word O. When we're in trouble, we'd say, oh my, or oh my goodness. Oh, we really say that, or woe. And what it means is pain, dismay, trouble. Woe to thee, O land, when thy king is a child. That literally means a boy or a damsel, a child. And thy princes eat in the morning. Now, when I read that, I thought, eat in the morning. Well, this is why I think it's important, you kids, to read everything, to read a lot, read history, because I immediately thought of something. How many have heard the phrase, breakfast is the most important meal of the day? Do you know before 1960, nobody really even ate breakfast? 1906, excuse me. Your forefathers in the 1800s, they didn't eat breakfast. They didn't eat any breakfast. And I remember reading this, kind of shocked me. Breakfast cereal, that comes from Kellogg's and Post Toasties. Those guys were cultists. And they started promoting cereal for a cultic belief. You know that? I'm not making it up. You can check this out. Back in the 1700s, maybe they would get up in the morning, and maybe they might have a little piece of bread. They might drink something, a little juice, and they'd go to work. I mean, aren't they saying today the longer you put off breakfast, the longer you can fast and break your fast, the more ketones, if you do any study on health at all, the easier it is for you to lose weight. And the problem is we make breakfast the biggest meal of the day. Your forefathers, and I always wondered, you look at pictures of the 1930s and 1940s, people walking down the street, they're thinner than me. You look at people walking down the street today, and they're not skinny, they're not thin. So what's going on? What's America known for? Being overweight. Europeans, you ask them, what do you think Americans? They'll say two things: stupid and obese. I think there are a lot of stupid Americans, but they see it on the news is what they're seeing. But we do have a problem. And I think a lot of it is Our forefathers, again, if you think even people that run in these hills here, the Anasazi, they didn't get up in the morning and have them some French toast and a bowl of cereal and a banana and some eggs and bacon and a steak. And man, they're out probably trying to hunt till noon, trying to get a rabbit, something to eat. We wonder why they were skinny. But Kellogg's was a guy, he was a Seventh-day Adventist. And they believe that if you eat meat, that's a sin. That's wrong. They think they follow the law, and they don't at all. They don't at all. For one thing, Seventh-day Adventist church over here, the word Sabbath does not mean go to church on Saturday. The word Sabbath doesn't mean even 7. It means do nothing. It means rest. That's all it means. It doesn't even say go to church on Saturday. The word Sabbath, they were to do nothing. They were just to rest. It doesn't say to go to a place of worship. It means rest. That's why when I get saved, the Bible said there remaineth therefore a Sabbath for the children of God. I rested in Christ. I started keeping the Sabbath the day I rested in Jesus and decided I'm going to just trust him alone as my Savior. I'm resting in him. That's keeping the Sabbath. I'm resting in my salvation in his. And so what they were trying to do is they're trying to come up with some sort of a grain to replace meat, to try to get the masses to quit eating meat. And it tasted so nasty, so they even got with, I think it was, I can't remember what banana company, on a $1 million crusade to try to say you need to put a banana with your cornflakes. And they brainwash everybody. Now we say breakfast is the most important meal. I mean, how many have heard that diamonds are forever a girl's best friend? Diamonds are worthless. Diamonds are absolutely worthless. And I'm not trying to discourage you ladies. If you like them, great. I said, I'd rather have some color. But diamonds are not rare. People say diamonds are an investment. Okay, ladies, go try to sell your He doesn't want it. Sure, they don't want it. They've got so many diamonds. So I've told you this. De Beers is a company. They bought up every diamond company in the world. Now, there's a couple that are trying to break back in, but they got up in Canada, but they've got a total world monopoly on diamonds because they got so many. What they do is they only trickle out a few every year, so you think they're rare, so they can keep the price up. So a man has to spend, according to the brainwash theory, 3 months' salary for a diamond ring. That's a lot of moolah. It's a lot of diamond. We've been brainwashed. So what do you think that means? He's talking about, let me read that again. Woe to thee, O land, when thy king is a child, and thy princes eat in the morning. Say, what's wrong with that? Well, could he be getting ready to talk about leaders that really are more concerned about things, maybe a little overindulgence, maybe taking things that aren't theirs, maybe kind of like Eli and 2 sons. When they would come to the house of God, the 2 boys of Eli would meet people out front, and they'd say, let me see what you got. And they'd look through their sacrifices, and they'd have some steak here and have maybe some prime rib here. They're going to offer a meat sacrifice. And they'll say, I'll take this here, and I want this one, and I want this one. The people say, whoa, 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 whoa. This is for our offering. We're supposed to take this in the temple. You can have it with it when we're done with it. Nah, we want it right now. If you don't take it, you give it to us, or we're going to beat you up and take it. This is what's going on in the house of God. And even when Eli fell off his seat and broke his neck when he heard about the ark being taken, it says he broke his neck because he was heavy. Sounds to me like he was taking a little kickbacks too, a little bit. Do you think our leaders today, do you think they sound like people who are, that they're control of their flesh and control of even their own money? Or does it sound to me like maybe there's a few kickbacks, a few bribes, a few passing money under the table, insider trading, hush money? I wrote down compromising. All I got to do is start naming names. Hunter Biden getting $50,000 a month to advise some Ukrainian company on natural gas, and he has no knowledge of it at all. And then that company gives his dad millions of dollars. But there's no connection. Hunter Biden, a cocaine addict, $50,000 a month for his great wisdom. Or Nancy Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi, that everybody knows, and they even admit, even the Democrats admit, she earned $130 million in stock market profits. That's a return, listen to this, that is a return of 16,930%. That's not bad. You'll put your money in the bank and get 3%. She got 16,000%. Man, her husband's smart. Man, he's a smart guy. She made so much money. Somebody wrote down the insider trading that she's worth $413 million. They said if she saved every penny of her salary, $75,000 salary, to get that amount would take her 2,374 years if she saved every penny. In a few years, she's worth $413 million. Or Hillary Clinton, who in 2010 sold 25% of the United States uranium to the Russians. And just coincidentally, the company that they did that dealing with just coincidentally gave the Clinton Foundation $203 million. And Bill coincidentally got $500,000 for talking. Went someplace and talked, and they gave him no connection, okay? No connection. Or Eric Stalwell, who's sleeping with a girl who's as a known Chinese spy. And there's no dirty dealings with our government leaders. I'm just joking there. I'm saying that tongue in cheek. Oy vey. Whoa. God said, whoa, when you got a land where they're taking things they shouldn't, when they're overindulging, when they eat in the morning and they're taking bribes, and again, you just start even just naming other names. I could mention, of course, Pelosi, about anybody you could name in our government. Even I don't care if they're the Republicans. There's a lot of dirty dealing going on. And I hate to say that to the kids, and I don't say it's all gloom and doom, because America has gone through different cycles. And Gabe asked me that, which I think is a wise question to Gabe. He'll say, Dad, have you seen this before? Do you remember this going on? Because I do remember other years under Clinton and under Carter, and under Reagan. And our country does go through cycles, but God just said, look, when you start seeing these things happen in land, oy vey, whoa, you're in trouble. Your land's in trouble. Back even in the 30s and 40s in the Depression, I didn't realize when I was a teenager that there were a lot of Americans messing with communism and even Nazism. There's old pictures from that era. There's massive rallies with 20, 30,000 people, and they got an American flag in America, and they have an American flag and a Nazi flag. I remember as a kid, man, shocked on that. That kind of surprised me. There was another guy, I'm trying to think what his name was. I think his name was Thurman. And he was approached by some government officials. They were going to overthrow Roosevelt, who was pretty much a communist, and they were more Nazis, and they were going to even turn the army. And he went to the authorities and kind of ratted on them. And you know what they did about it? There was literally going to be a coup in the nation. You know what they did about it? Nothing. They did absolutely nothing about it. They just hushed it. I mean, everybody heard about it, but just kind of like today, and a lot of the things that go on today, God just said, this is a sign in your country. When you land, let's read that again. He says, woe to thee, O land, when the king is a child and thy princes eat in the morning. He said, your country's inevitable. Your country's on the road to collapse. Your country's on the road to collapse. They're not going to do anything. I doubt it. We forgot. How many remember Vince Foster? Does anybody really remember that? Anybody else? Nick's the only one. And I forget about it too. I forget about when the Clintons were in. I forget about a video that went around, the Clinton Chronicles. And it was put out not by some nutty Christians. It was put out in the Attorney General of the state of Arkansas that Bill Clinton was at. He is on there saying, you Americans have no idea what you just did, who you put in control. And documents like 21 people that were mysteriously murdered. They were getting ready to testify against the drug dealings of the Clintons. There was 2 boys that were going to testify on some planes landing with drugs that Clinton was dealing in Arkansas, and they mysteriously laid their heads down on a train track and fell asleep and had a train run over them. And there was another guy that was going to testify in about a week against the Clintons, and he was in the room, and he decided to commit suicide, and he flung himself through a closed window with the shades down and threw himself through it all and committed suicide. They were charging him with child abuse, and they even tortured his body. I won't say what they did to him. And later on, it come out he was innocent, and they were guilty. See, we forget about it. Vince Foster, that Hillary Clinton worked for. I'm just saying, there's skullduggery. But there's always been skullduggery. But he's saying, look, when you see this, you better pray for your country, is all I'm saying. He said, it's a sign. Your country's heading to collapse. Keep your hand here. But look, here's the verse I kind of want, though. Look at Isaiah 2. Look there real quick. This is the verse that I connect with that and think of many, many times. He said, when your country is doing this, it's heading to collapse. I mean, do you think our government and our society and what you see kids watching TV and Hollywood, do you think they're lovers of pleasure or lovers of God? I kind of think God's been tossed out a long time ago. And God said the last days, perilous times will come. Men will be lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God. And they will worship and serve the creature, the creation, more than the creator. Did you see that the other day? Some lady, 50-year-old lady, decided for her 50th birthday she was going to marry her dog. Now, I told you that stuff was going to come. Now, right now, she's just being silly. Not in the future. You mark it down. First time I went to India, I still got it. When I come back from India, some of you remember we were out of the old location, and I come back and I had a paper. I kept the papers. It just blew me away. I'd never been outside of the country, and seeing Buddhism and Hinduism in its depth, and the temple of the tooth where they're worshiping Buddha's tooth, and just people wailing and crying. The paganism was just unbelievable. And I remember I showed you in Article 1 was on the front page was a head laying there detached from the body. And what it was while we were there, they had a bomb went off at the Temple of the Tooth, and the guy's head was blown off. They just put it on the front page. And there's the guy's head, page number 1, first front page news. Our country would never do that. We'd probably tell him he was a peaceful protester. And then another thing I showed you was they had an article in there where they were going to marry 2 trees. They were going to marry a team tree to some other tree. And I mean, they weren't being silly. They were going to have this big celebration in this town. And also there was another article where they were going to have to trim a tree, and they were telling people, look, we've got to do this, because if we don't, those limbs are falling and hitting people. And so, because they believe a tree is a human. And so they're marrying a tree to a tree. I said, well, we're not that stupid. Hey, those 2, they just had 2 cougars they put down here in Colorado for killing somebody, and they're giving the people that did it death threats. Right here in this state. People are threatening to kill the people that killed the cougars. They're going to say, we're going to kill you for killing them. We would rather have a live cougar and a dead human. That's the value of life. God said, oy vey. Whoa. Oi. That's what Jews get that. We say, oh, the Germans. When the prince is eating in the morning, they're taking kickbacks, and your king's a child. Look at Isaiah says. Now, I want you to remember where Isaiah fits chronologically. The more you know, if you stick with it and you stick with your Bible, pretty soon you'll start really plug some things in. You got your major prophets and your minor prophets, okay? Of course, you got Genesis and the Pentateuch, and then you got the Kings and Chronicles and the poetry, Psalms and Proverbs and Job and Song of Solomon. And then you still got the prophets. If you start breaking it down, it makes sense. You got major prophets and minor, but they're not just major and minor. They're not major and minor in importance, but they are in length, but also where they're placed. Isaiah, Jeremiah, who wrote Lamentations, Ezekiel and Daniel are all kind of before the fall. Ezekiel and Daniel, post-fall. Jeremiah kind of in between. Isaiah's before the Babylonian captivity. Jeremiah's both middle and last. pre, mid, and post. Then Ezekiel and Daniel are taken as slaves. So they're post-exile. And then you got all the minor prophets, Hosea and Joel and Amos, and those are guys that came later. So, okay, I said all that. So where's Isaiah fit when the country's going down? And I've told you many times, I'll read Isaiah and Jeremiah and think, oh man, we are in trouble, because this sounds just like us. I mean, he told Ezekiel, he said, now look, Ezekiel, I'm going to send you, and they're not going to listen to you because they're a stiff-necked people, and I'm going to have to break their neck. He said, but whether they hear or forbear, you're going to go talk to them. He said, they're not going to listen to you, but I don't care whether they listen or not, because they got a stiff neck. And I think that's where we're headed in America when it comes to things of God. Now, Ezekiel's over here. Isaiah's over here before he starts seeing things. He starts seeing things happening in the country, and he even pronounces some woes. He has several woes, oy veys. And he says over here, look at Isaiah 3. Here's what he said about a country. Verse 11, woe unto the wicked, it shall be ill with him, for the reward of his hands shall be given him. As for the people, children are your oppressors, and women rule over them. O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to err, to destroy the way of thy paths. He just said, oh man, when you got kids and women running the country, you are in trouble. Now, God bless you ladies. I am thankful for you ladies. I'm not anti-woman. My wife's a woman. My own mother was a woman. So I'm not against the ladies. And I think it would be a horrible world without ladies. It would stink like dirty socks. There'd never be any clean dish in that. I ain't kidding you. You want to know what it'd be like? Go to a men's prison. Horrible. It would smell. It would be terrible. But God has different positions, and I know what a woman is, and I know what a man is. And I know where God said, and here's what I really believe. I love preaching on Vashti over there in the book of Esther. And she started the first women's movement. She's a beautiful lady, and her husband wanted her to come, and I don't know if he wanted to put on a show, or it sounds like it's a little bit more risque. It sounds like it's pretty nasty, gonna be. And she is a woman with some backbone, and she said, I ain't doing it. And he said, I am telling you, wife, you get in here. She said, nope. And she wouldn't come in. And now all the men of the country said, buddy, now your wife just messed it all up, because now all of our wives are going to fight us. That's what literally happened. So you got to do something about the queen, because if you don't put her down, we're going to have a women's riot here. So he banishes her, and that's where Esther comes in. But you know why that you have women's movements? Because men are too lazy to do what they're supposed to do. And sometimes even in the home, us guys are lazy. We're lazy. We let the wife do the family devotions. So I'm busy. Man, I got to get to work here. We let the wife raise the kids. It's your responsibilities, guys. It's your job to teach them the Bible. It's your job to apply the Bible. It's your job to say, well, I can't be sitting at home doing homeschooling, but it's your job to see this being done. You better be overseeing that, because we've got a country. I checked the other day, it's talking about women's rights. Ladies, you're already running this country. Do you know how many women are in charge of universities and police forces and fire departments? Just look at the news. There's always some lesbian lady in charge of it. You know how the women that are in colleges today outnumber guys like 3 to 1. Who do you think is going to be putting in places of leadership in 5, 6 more years? And God will read it again. Look at it. He says, as verse number 12, as for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. Oh, oy vey. Oh, my people. They which lead thee cause thee to err and destroy the ways I have passed. Now again, I'm thankful for ladies. And if guys won't do it, ladies, you got to step up to the plate. You do. If you got a lazy husband, then you do it. And he'll have to answer to God for it. And Timothy's dad, either he was missing in action, or dead, but his mom and grandma raised him to be a godly man. And he became Paul's right hand. And he said, oh, Timothy, oh, man of God. So you can do it. You can raise a man of God without a man. It can be done, but only if you use God. But it'll be to the man's detriment and the judgment of God in this life and the life to come. But ladies, the joke is, don't ever buy a horse or a dog that's been raised by a woman. I'm not being silly. We'd jump on a horse if they're out in the alfalfa and they're going to be bloating, and Dad would say, the cows are on the alfalfa, it just rained. One time we had a whole herd got on the alfalfa, and they started dropping in the field, and Dad, we were running around. Dad said, get me a knife, and we went and got a pocket knife. He said, no. He started stabbing. We had 21 cows that almost died of the stab. I'm just telling you, it was serious. I don't have time to dink around on a horse. When you got 21 cows dropping, he's running around stabbing them to keep them alive, stabbing them here so the gas comes out and everything else comes out of their stomach so they don't fall over dead. I'm just going to be honest, my wife's family, they raise horses too, but they raise them for pleasure. And we'd be tightening up. When I first met her and I'd tighten up the saddle on some of their horses, they'd reach around to bite me. Well, if our horses did that, they're going to get a knuckle sandwich. I don't got a time for that horse to be trying to fight me to put a saddle on. Well, I was raised by females. You ladies, if your husband won't do it and do a good job. God bless you. But there's sometimes you ladies, when you see your kids say, oh, little Junior, he didn't mean it. And the dad's, like I said, I can look at a boy and think, the kid's going to steal that. I can look at his face. Oh, he's a good little boy. I'm thinking, he's got theft on his mind. I can sit there and watch. I like watching the church kids, you know. Again, like I said, when not too long ago, I see the boys out here, those 4 boys, and they each had, almost every time I come to church, I got to remove sticks. There's always a stick laying here. You give a boy a stick, he's happy. He's happy. And I always take a stick and I throw it back over there. I'll bet you a third of the time I have to throw sticks up there. Some boys drop their sword. And I watched one time I was walking up and those 4 up there and they all got their stick. And 2 more boys are running up there and just in a second they got their sticks. Okay, they're happy. But I know very good and well they're going to be hitting each other with those sticks. This is just what boys are going to do. They're going to be clunking each other over the head. And then the moms get mad. And who's Jimmy did what to Johnny? And the guy's just thinking, oh, they're all guilty. When Obama got elected, and I've told you this often, my son had more business experience of him at 20 years old than Obama had when he was ruler of this world. They gave him the Nobel Peace Prize for doing nothing. I saw a clip the other day, and the clip was when presidents were regal, elegant, handsome, can't remember what other nonsense, and earned the Nobel Prize, and they show Obama coming in. I'm thinking, earned it? He did don't get mad at me. He did absolutely nothing. And they gave him the world, they gave him the Nobel Peace Prize. I was thinking this the other day, I come across it, and I suspicioned this. There's actually a psychological term they have for Nobel Prize winners. It's not an official term, and it's not some great term, it's just the Nobel syndrome, they call it. Not all of them, but they said what happens is when they give a Nobel Prize to men, they said several times, all of a sudden that guy begins to get an inflated opinion of himself to where he starts becoming psychotic. This isn't from a Christian thing. This isn't a Christian view. This is what they'll say. I've got it written on my other notes where they'll actually begin to think they are an expert on every subject and you know nothing. And they will listen to zero criticism. And sometimes they they said with bizarre ideas, bizarre, crazy ideas, and you can't change them. They call it the Nobel syndrome. And I thought, that's what Hollywood gets. I really believe pretty soon they start, you know what the Bible term is? Pride. Whereas humans, there's something in us. If everybody tells you you're wonderful, pretty soon, because if you've got a sin nature, you're going to start thinking you're wonderful. And every idea that Rosie O'Donnell has when she's in Hollywood is perfect and you're a genius. Pretty soon they start believing their own press. Well, if somebody's negative, they look at them and say, you're fired, get out of here. They want their little posse of 20 people that are yes people. And that's what Obama was. And God said, when you got women and children running your country, you're in trouble. Woe unto you, he said. He literally said it. Verse number 11, woe, oy vey. Your country's in trouble. When you got kids running, when they got people, he said, when they eat in the morning, when they're taking kickbacks, when they're taking bribes. I said, you just about name a congressman. And there's some underhanded dealings many, many times. I think there's some good ones in there, and I think there's some saved ones. Some of them, they shock me. I love it when I hear them mention Jesus. That doesn't make them saved, but I'd rather hear them say Jesus than Muhammad any day. All I know is God says right there, your country's ruled by women and children, you are in trouble. Oh, my people. You're in trouble. I mean, when the country's going down, he literally, in Romans 1, is literally the collapse of a society. And that's where he's talking about where they'll worship and serve the Creator more. They'll worship creation more than God. I'll say it again. Just a woman going to marry her dog. And say, well, that's just as for a political joke. It won't be in 5 or 6 years. I've told you that. I said, I told you when they legalize homosexuality, I said the next thing will be pedophilia, bestiality, necrophilia. I'll say it again. When you look at pictures of Africa, and they're covered in cow manure and filthy, and it's not a racial thing. I don't care if you're European. There were just as many cannibals over there in Europe. Without God, we're animals. Odin, I remember talking to a guy, Christian fella, his hero was the Vikings. I said, well, Odin, he was a homosexual, right? What? The prisons have the Aryan nations, and they worship the Viking gods, and Odin, he was a homo. He was a bisexual. Read a little bit. That's our country, I believe, is in trouble. When Belshazzar, the country was going down. They were collapsing. You know what they're doing? Having a party. They're feasting. You know what I read Schumer's going to do? Again, here's where we're at in Ecclesiastes. They don't even know how to they don't know how to come in out of the rain, he said. Their labor is weary. It wearies everybody. Their arguments they're exhausting. And I hear Schumer say, when they get back in, he's going to restore all the money that Doge took out and add more. I'm thinking, where are you going to get it? They got the money machine. It's called the Federal Reserve. Click, 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 click. Hey, it doesn't take any more money to ink to put a 2 zeros by a 1 on a piece of cloth to put a 1 and 2 zeros than a 1. Don't take any more. Maybe a little bit of ink for 2 more zeros for a $100 bill. Just make more money, and that makes your dollar less valuable. And prices go up, and your value of the dollar goes down. I'm saying God's saying something here. Look back at it again. He says, woe unto you when your society is interested in self-gratification. And that's the U.S. Do you think America is more interested in the God of Scripture or the God of the Bible? I kind of think it's the God of pleasure than the God of the Bible. I kind of think it's more the pleasure. There'll be lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God. Look at verse 17. I got to wrap this up. I'll be done. Blessed art thou, O land, when thy king is the son of nobles. Now, this applies, man. When I read this, I thought, man, I can get news stories to fit this. Look what he says. He said, but your land is blessed when your king is the son of a noble, and thy princes eat in due season for strength. Look at, and not for drunkenness. Do you know any leaders, they're billionaires that have never touched alcohol? I know of one. Do you know of any leaders who, well, even though he's a billionaire, made all of his kids work and get jobs, and said, you're not just going to lay around. You're going to get jobs. You're going to work, and taught them how to work. Taught his sons. See, the word nobles, it means pure, that he was taught how to be a businessman. Now, Trump's not my Messiah. He could be the Antichrist for all I know. So don't say, well, he's all a Trumper and everything. He could be the Antichrist for all I know. But I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth either. I've never heard of a billionaire that's never touched alcohol in his life. That seems weird to me. He just said, when you got a leader who has some business savvy, who was taught some business, that's the son of nobles, he's not just there to make money. He's there, he's not eating, he's not feeding himself. Man, if I was that guy, I'd probably retire and kick back and go to Florida and die. Because all that guy's got is nothing but belly aching and griping and attacks and even attempts to kill him many, many times. And that's about all he's got worldwide, and people laughing at him and mocking. I don't know most preachers that could put up with them. You think you could put up with that much criticism and that many attacks? I don't know. People say, well, he's a narcissist. I'm glad he is. That's the only kind of guy that can say, I don't believe it. I'm not that. I'm not saying he's Jesus. I'm not saying he's the Messiah. But you know, I am glad that in the last few years, God has allowed us to see a few things. I'm glad that I said, if for the badness of the internet and all the even phones, there is a lot of bad, but I said if it wasn't for that in COVID, we wouldn't have known about critical race theory being taught. We wouldn't even know that. We wouldn't know they're teaching 60 genders in school. We wouldn't even know it. We wouldn't even have seen that they're letting the boys dress up as a girl at school and not telling mom. We wouldn't even know that. Could it be that God is giving us a little break, maybe? Could it be as God is testing the waters and saying, what are you going to do now? That's where Isaiah's at. He's trying to warn the people. That's why he kept warning the people and warning them ahead of time, saying, look, judgment's coming. You better get right with God. Judgment's coming. And they said, nah, we're doing fine. Jeremiah come along. He said, look, you're messed up on your beliefs and quit worshiping the Queen of Heaven. That, to me, is hilarious. Right down here in Albuquerque, I told you this, but most people don't got a clue what I'm talking about. Mary, that's her title. Right down here in Albuquerque, we drove by a church a few years ago, and I said to my wife, I said, there's Mary, the Queen of Heaven Catholic Church. That's a pagan religion. That comes from Tower of Babel. Nimrod's wife was the Queen of Heaven, Semiramis. And that's one of Mary's titles. They just flat out call her that. And Jeremiah said, you better quit worshiping the Queen of Heaven. And they said, well, we talked to our wives. They did. They went back and talked to their wives. Well, honey, what do you think? Well, we're not going to quit worshiping the Queen of Heaven. Jeremiah, we can't. Sorry, preacher. Our wives won't let us. That's what happened. And Jeremiah said, they're coming. The Huns are coming. And one day they looked out and the Babylonians are at the gate. People, America's got to go down. Say, why? Where are they at? Where are they at in the Bible? The only place I could see them being is Revelation 17 and 18. And that's a worldwide conflagration when an entire world system collapses and the rest of the world is in absolute utter shock, and they're literally blown to smithereens in 1 hour. And I think that's America myself. So, well, that sounds pretty gloom and doom. We've been here before. You know what? If we pray, maybe God would give us another 100 years. What's 100 years to God? If 1,000 years a day and a day is 1,000 years, what's 100 years? Like I said, you kids may die of old age. But if we're it's going to be people getting right with God. Where? In churches just like this. Father, thank you for this church. Thank you for these people. Thank you for your word that just tells it like it is. I'm thankful for it. Couldn't get any plainer than that. All we got to do is watch the news. The corruption it's wearies. It does. It worries everyone. It's exhausting. Stop signs are racist. White paint is racist. Green lawns are racist. Math is racist. Just after a while, our head just, I think, oh Lord, how can people be so insane? And that's where we're headed. It does come to just some insanity without God, without you. So God helps us as Christians to include you in everything we do. To include you in church today. There are a lot of churches Jesus won't be welcome. Laodicea, he was kicked out of church. In Revelation 3, he was kicked out of the church. Right before the trib, Jesus is gone. They're having church. And Jesus standing at the door knocking, saying, can I come in? Will the church let me back into church? That's how far the churches are going to get. And there's churches all over. Jesus is not welcome. And so we want to, as individuals, welcome you in our heart and our life and our home. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. You're dismissed. Anybody in the choir, head down, please. Right.